Hello, everyone. Today, I'm here to share an extraordinary experience that completely reshaped my view of friendship, relationships, and boundaries. If you've ever wondered how an ordinary connection can transform into something utterly unexpected, this story is for you. Let's start with a little about myself. My name is Julia. I'm 29 years old, living in the bustling city of Chicago. My life is relatively straightforward. I work as a store manager at a trendy boutique downtown. Most of my time is consumed by work. And when I'm not at the boutique, I prefer the solace of my apartment. I've always been a reserved person. While I've had a few friends over the years, my social circle remains tight-knit. You could say I'm a creature of habit. I value stability and tend to shy away from unpredictable situations. Perhaps that's why this story feels so surreal to me. It starts with my best friend, Carla, a whirlwind of energy and charisma, and her husband, Jake, a charming yet enigmatic figure who played a pivotal role in this experience. Carla and I met under the most unconventional of circumstances. It was a few years ago, during what I now refer to as the disaster chapter of my life. Back then, I was deeply entangled in a relationship with someone I genuinely believed was my forever person. But as life often does, it threw a curveball in the form of betrayal and Carla. One evening, I received a message from a stranger on social media. It was Carla. Her opening line was so direct that it left me breathless. "Hi, I'm sorry to message you like this, but I think you need to know something about your boyfriend." My heart raced as I stared at the screen, debating whether to respond. Curiosity got the better of me, and I typed a tentative reply. Carla's next message included screenshots, photos, and conversations that left no room for doubt. My boyfriend had been seeing her while still with me. Carla, unaware of his relationship with me at the time, had only discovered the truth when she stumbled upon my profile through mutual connections. She could have easily ignored it or written it off as not her problem, but instead she chose to confront him and then reach out to me. That act of honesty, while painful, was also incredibly brave. When we finally met in person to talk things over, I was a wreck. My emotions were raw, ranging from anger to heartbreak, but Carla's calm demeanor and genuine concern helped steady me. She wasn't there to gloat or pity me. She was there to help me see the truth about the man I thought I loved. Her candor was refreshing, even if it hurt. Over coffee at a small cafe in the heart of Chicago, we exchanged stories about him. The similarities were startling. His patterns of manipulation, the lies he told to keep us both in the dark, and the way he made each of us feel like we were the only one. By the end of that conversation, my anger had shifted from Carla to him entirely. Instead of feeling like rivals, we found common ground in our shared experience. What struck me most about Carla that day was her resilience. She talked about her own heartbreak with a sense of determination that inspired me. "Men like him," she said, "don't define who we are. We're stronger than that." Those words stuck with me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Our unlikely connection blossomed into a friendship built on trust and mutual respect. Carla became my confidant, someone I could turn to when the weight of the breakup felt unbearable. She never sugar-coated things but always knew how to say what I needed to hear. In return, I found myself rooting for her happiness, admiring her ability to move forward with grace. As months passed, our friendship deepened. Carla's vibrant personality was a stark contrast to my reserved nature. But somehow we balanced each other perfectly. She pushed me out of my comfort zone, encouraging me to take risks and embrace life's unpredictability. Whether it was dragging me to yoga classes or convincing me to try a new restaurant, Carla had a way of making every moment feel like an adventure. The turning point in our friendship came during a late-night conversation on her apartment balcony. The city lights twinkled in the distance as we sipped wine and talked about everything from dreams to fears. It was then that Carla confessed something that floored me. "I almost didn't message you that day. I was scared you'd hate me." I stared at her, stunned. "Hate you? Carla, you saved me. If it weren't for you, I'd still be living a lie." She smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "It's just, not everyone would have been so understanding. You could have blamed me or refused to listen. But instead you gave me a chance. And I'm so grateful for that." In that moment I realized how rare our connection was. We had taken what could have been a disastrous situation and turned it into something beautiful. Carla wasn't just my friend. She was my anchor, someone who had shown me the power of honesty and vulnerability. This foundation of trust and openness set the stage for everything that came next. Little did I know, the journey we had started that day would lead to an experience that would challenge everything I thought I knew about relationships, boundaries, and myself. As our friendship grew, I found myself spending more time with Carla and Jake. Their home became a second haven for me, a place where I could escape the demands of my work and the solitude of my apartment. What struck me most about them was their dynamic, effortless, playful, and deeply connected. It was the kind of relationship that many people envy, or at least that's what I thought at the time. Initially, my interactions with Jake were casual and friendly. He was easy to talk to, always ready with a joke or an insightful comment. But over time, I began to notice subtle changes in the way he engaged with me. His compliments, once general and lighthearted, started to feel more personal. "You're really good at this, Julia," he'd say as I helped Carla with dinner. Or, "That color looks amazing on you," when I arrived in a new outfit. First, I brushed it off as harmless kindness, but the glances were harder to ignore. They lingered just a little too long, carrying a weight that made my heart race. I often caught Jake watching me during our conversations, his gaze steady and unreadable. It was unsettling but also strangely thrilling. I told myself it was all in my head, an overactive imagination fueled by my lack of romantic experiences. Yet, the signs became harder to dismiss. One evening, Carla invited me over for dinner. As usual, Jake greeted me warmly at the door. Carla was running late, so it was just the two of us for a while. He offered me a glass of wine, and we sat in the living room making small talk. The atmosphere was relaxed at first, but there was an undercurrent of tension I couldn't quite place. "You've been such a great friend to Carla," Jake said, his voice softer than usual. "She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her," I replied, smiling. "She's been a huge part of my life." There was a brief pause, and then he said something that caught me completely off guard. "You've been a huge part of my life too, Julia." The sincerity in his tone left me speechless. Before I could respond, Carla walked in, her presence breaking the moment. She greeted us cheerfully, unaware of the shift that had just occurred. For the rest of the evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The following weeks only deepened my confusion. Jake's actions became increasingly bold. During a weekend barbecue, I noticed him watching me from across the yard. His gaze wasn't fleeting. It was deliberate, almost as if he was trying to communicate something unspoken. When I caught his eye, he didn't look away. Instead, he smiled, a slow, knowing smile that sent shivers down my spine. Carla, ever the social butterfly, was busy entertaining guests and didn't seem to notice. But I felt like I was under a spotlight. Every interaction with Jake charged with an energy I didn't know how to handle. I tried to focus on Carla, on our friendship, but the tension was impossible to ignore. One particularly revealing moment came during a late-night conversation. Carla, Jake, and I were sitting around their fire pit, talking about life and dreams. The conversation took a reflective turn, and Carla playfully asked, "Julia, what's your biggest regret?" I hesitated, unsure of how much to share. "I guess, not taking enough risks," I admitted. "I've always played it safe, and sometimes I wonder what I've missed out on because of that." Jake leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. "Sometimes the best things in life come from stepping outside your comfort zone," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "You never know what you might discover." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Carla laughed, oblivious to the undercurrent. "She's right, though," she said, nudging me. "You should take more chances, Julia. Life's too short to play it safe." I nodded, forcing a smile, but my thoughts were racing. Was I imagining things? Or was Jake trying to tell me something? The intensity of his gaze, the subtle inflections in his voice, it all felt deliberate. For the first time, I questioned the boundaries of our friendship. The real turning point came during another dinner at their house. Carla had stepped out to take a phone call, leaving Jake and me alone in the kitchen. We worked side by side, chopping vegetables and chatting about mundane topics. but the air between us felt anything but mundane. You know, Jake began, his tone casual, I've always admired how strong you are. You've been through so much, and yet you're still here, still standing tall. I paused, my hand stilling over the cutting board. Thank you, I said softly. That means a lot. He turned to face me, his expression earnest. I mean it, Julia. You're incredible. Anyone would be lucky to have you in their life. The sincerity in his voice made my chest tighten. Before I could respond, Carla returned, her laughter filling the room and dispelling the tension. But the moment stayed with me, replaying in my mind long after I left their house that night. It was becoming clear that the dynamics between us were shifting, but I didn't know how to address it. Part of me wanted to talk to Carla to make sense of what was happening, but another part of me feared what that conversation might uncover. For the first time, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something vast and uncertain, unsure whether to step forward or retreat. Little did I know this was only the beginning. It started like any other casual evening with Carla and Jake. They had invited me over for a low-key barbecue, a tradition of ours that had grown over the years. The smell of grilled meat filled the air as Jake tended to the barbecue with his usual expertise, while Carla and I laughed over shared memories from the past. The night was warm, the stars were out, and everything felt comfortably familiar. Until Carla said something that changed everything. We were sitting around the patio table, enjoying our second round of wine, when Carla suddenly leaned forward, a mischievous glint in her eye. Julia, have you ever considered, I don't know, stepping outside your comfort zone? I laughed nervously, unsure where she was going with this. What do you mean? She exchanged a glance with Jake, whose expression was calm but attentive. Then she turned back to me and said, Jake and I have been talking, and we've decided we want to try something new, something unconventional. The way she emphasized the last word sent a ripple of tension through the air. My mind raced as I tried to decipher her meaning. Okay, I said cautiously. What exactly are you talking about? Carla hesitated for a moment, as if searching for the right words. Then, with a confidence that only she could muster, she said, We want you to be part of our relationship. Intimately. Time seemed to freeze. The weight of her words hung heavily in the air. And for a moment, I wasn't sure if I had heard her correctly. My heart raced as I looked between Carla and Jake, searching their faces for some indication that this was a joke. But their expressions were sincere, even vulnerable. Wait, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Are you serious? Carla nodded. We've been thinking about this for a while. We trust you, Julia. You're the one person we both feel comfortable with, the one person we know won't judge us. We've always felt there was something special about the dynamic between the three of us. I didn't know what to say. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Shock, confusion, curiosity, and something else I couldn't quite define. Part of me wanted to laugh it off, to pretend this conversation wasn't happening. But another part of me was intrigued, drawn to the idea in a way I didn't fully understand. Look, Carla said gently, sensing my hesitation. We don't want to pressure you. Who had been silent up until this point finally spoke. You mean a lot to us, Julia, he said, his voice steady but warm. This isn't just about attraction. It's about connection, trust, and exploring something deeper together. But only if you're open to it. Their words stirred something inside me. I'd always admired the strength of their relationship, the way they seemed to complement each other so perfectly. And now they were inviting me into that sacred space, offering me a chance to share in something I'd never even considered before. It was overwhelming but also strangely flattering. I don't know, I admitted, my voice trembling slightly. This is a lot to process. I mean, I care about both of you, but I've never thought about this. Carla reached across the table and took my hand in hers. Take your time, she said softly. We're not in a rush. We just wanted you to know how we feel. Whatever you decide, we'll respect your choice. We sat in silence for a while after that, the crackling of the fire pit filling the void. I could feel their eyes on me, not with expectation but with hope. It was clear how much this meant to them, but they weren't pushing me. They were giving me space to find my own answer. As the evening wore on, I found myself reflecting on everything that had led to this moment. The years of friendship, the laughter and tears we'd shared. The sense of belonging I felt whenever I was with them. And beneath it all, an undeniable connection that I'd never fully acknowledged until now. By the time I left their house that night, I still didn't have an answer. But one thing was certain. My relationship with Carla and Jake would never be the same. Their proposal had opened a door I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. But part of me couldn't stop wondering what might lie on the other side. After agreeing to Carla and Jake's proposal, I found myself stepping into a world I had never imagined. It was exhilarating yet terrifying. The boundaries of our relationship had shifted, and with it came a whirlwind of emotions that I struggled to navigate. The first time we gathered after my decision was a quiet evening at their home. Carla greeted me with her usual warmth, her smile as reassuring as ever. Jake, too, was his charming self, but there was a subtle shift in his demeanor. A newfound attentiveness that didn't go unnoticed. The three of us sat down for dinner, and though the conversation flowed as easily as always, there was an underlying tension that none of us could ignore. As the evening progressed, Carla broke the ice. "Julia," she said softly, "we're so grateful that you're open to this. We want you to know how much this means to us." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm grateful too," I replied, though my voice trembled slightly. "But I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about all of this." Carla reached across the table and took my hand. "That's okay," she said. "We're all figuring it out together. There's no rush." Her reassurance was comforting, but it didn't quell the mix of excitement and apprehension swirling within me. Jake's steady gaze met mine, and for a moment I felt a sense of calm. It was as though he was silently telling me that everything would be okay. The first time we ventured beyond the boundaries of friendship was both surreal and deeply intimate. Carla had suggested we start small, easing into this new dynamic at a pace that felt comfortable for everyone. She was the first to break the physical barrier, leaning in to kiss me gently. It was unexpected but not unwelcome. Her touch was warm and reassuring, and I found myself relaxing into the moment. Jake, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward with the same gentleness. His touch was tentative, almost as though he was afraid of overstepping. The three of us moved cautiously, each action deliberate and imbued with trust. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced, a connection that felt as much emotional as it was physical. Despite my initial nerves, I began to feel a sense of freedom. There was no judgment, no pressure, just three people exploring uncharted territory together. The vulnerability of the moment was both humbling and empowering. It wasn't about perfection, it was about connection, about allowing ourselves to be seen and accepted in our entirety. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on what had transpired. There were moments of exhilaration when I felt closer to Carla and Jake than ever before. But there were also moments of doubt. What did this mean for our friendship? Could we maintain the same bond we'd always had? Or would this new dynamic change everything? Carla, ever perceptive, noticed my hesitation during one of our conversations. "You're overthinking again, aren't you?" she asked with a knowing smile. I laughed, though it was tinged with nervousness. "Maybe a little. It's just, this is so new to me. I'm worried about what happens if things go wrong." "That's natural," she said, her tone gentle. "But remember, we're in this together. If something doesn't feel right, we'll stop. This only works if all three of us feel safe and happy." Her words reassured me, but it was Jake who provided the final piece of clarity. "Julia," he said one evening as we sat on the couch, "you mean so much to us. This isn't just an experiment or a whim. We care about you, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to make this work." Hearing that from him, a man who had always seemed so composed and self-assured, was deeply moving. It solidified my resolve to give this new relationship a real chance. The turning point came during a weekend getaway the three of us had planned. Carla had suggested we spend a few days at a cozy cabin in the woods, away from the distractions of the city. It was there, amidst the serenity of nature, that I felt a true sense of belonging. One evening, as we sat by the fire, Carla turned to me with a look of pure affection. "Julia," she said, "you've become such an important part of our lives. I can't imagine doing this with anyone else." Her words brought tears to my eyes. "I feel the same way," I admitted. "This has been one of the most challenging, yet rewarding experiences of my life. Jake placed a hand on my shoulder, his expression warm and sincere. "We're so glad you took this leap with us. It means the world." As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled above, I realized that this uncharted territory wasn't as frightening as I had imagined. With Carla and Jake by my side, I felt a sense of connection and trust that was unlike anything I'd ever known. Together, we were navigating a path that was uniquely ours, one step at a time. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening. Carla had invited me over for dinner, promising a relaxed night filled with laughter and good food. Jake was already in the kitchen when I arrived, the aroma of garlic and roasted vegetables filling the air. Carla greeted me with a hug and poured me a glass of wine, her energy as infectious as ever. The evening started like so many others we had shared, the three of us exchanging stories and jokes as we sat around the dining table. But as the wine flowed, the atmosphere began to shift. The laughter grew louder, the glances lingered longer, and a subtle tension settled over us like an unspoken invitation. By the time we opened the second bottle of wine, I could feel the effects of the alcohol loosening my inhibitions. Carla leaned closer to me, her hand resting lightly on my arm as she spoke. Her touch sent a shiver down my spine, and I found myself drawn to the warmth in her eyes. Jake, too, seemed more relaxed, his usual composure giving way to a softer, more open demeanor. "You know," Carla said, her voice low and intimate, "you've brought so much light into our lives, Julia. We're so lucky to have you." Her words, combined with the wine and the closeness of the moment, made my heart race. "I feel the same way," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Being with you both has been incredible." Carla's eyes searched mine, and then she leaned in and kissed me. It was soft at first, tentative, but quickly deepened as I responded. My mind raced, but my body acted on instinct, leaning into her warmth. Jake watched us, his expression unreadable at first, but then he smiled, a look of quiet understanding. Without a word, he stood and moved closer. His hand grazed my shoulder, then slid down to my waist, pulling me gently toward him. The kiss between Carla and me broke as Jake tilted my face toward his. His lips were firm yet tender, and the sensation sent a rush of heat through my body. What happened next felt like a blur, a cascade of sensations and emotions that I had never experienced before. Carla's hands roamed over my body, her touch both exploratory and knowing. Jake's presence was grounding, his steady movements guiding me as we navigated this uncharted territory together. The three of us moved as if in sync, each touch and kiss building on the one before. My shirt slipped off, followed by Carla's, and soon there were no barriers between us. Jake's hands found their way to the small of my back, while Carla's lips trailed along my neck, leaving a trail of warmth in their wake. My senses were overwhelmed, the softness of Carla's skin, the strength of Jake's embrace, the intoxicating blend of our breaths and whispers. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The boundaries that had once defined our relationship dissolved, replaced by a connection that felt both primal and profound. Every touch, every kiss carried a weight that went beyond the physical. It was as though we were bearing not just our bodies but our souls. But amidst the passion, there was also a flicker of tension. I could feel the weight of this decision pressing on all of us, the unspoken question of what this would mean for our future. Carla must have sensed it too because she paused, her hand resting gently on my cheek. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft and filled with concern. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm okay." Jake's hand found mine, his grip reassuring. "We can stop anytime," he said. "This only works if you're comfortable." Their care and attentiveness brought tears to my eyes. "I'm okay," I repeated more firmly this time. "I want this." And with that, we continued on our journey, the tension that had once enveloped us gradually giving way to an overwhelming sense of liberation. It was as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders, allowing me to breathe freely for the first time. For the very first time in my life, I felt a profound sense of freedom. Free to explore the depths of my thoughts, to fully embrace my emotions, and to connect with others in ways I had never imagined possible. The night unfolded like a beautiful tapestry, woven with threads of laughter, shared stories, and genuine moments of connection. It was a night of transformation, one that left me both exhilarated and humbled, reminding me of the beauty of vulnerability and the power of authentic relationships. As the stars twinkled above us, I realized that this experience would forever be etched in my memory, a beacon of hope and possibility for the future. The morning after that unforgettable night, I found myself staring out of the window, the soft rays of sunlight casting a golden glow over the room. Carla and Jake were still asleep, their breathing steady and peaceful. I felt a strange mix of emotions, joy, wonder, and a hint of trepidation. The experience we shared was unlike anything I had ever imagined, but it also left me with questions I wasn't sure how to answer. As I sipped my coffee in the quiet of their kitchen, my thoughts drifted to the past. Just a few months ago, I could never have envisioned myself in this place. Emotionally, physically, or even geographically, the transformation I had undergone felt monumental, yet it wasn't without its challenges. I thought about the trust it took to get here, the leap of faith I had made when I agreed to step outside my comfort zone. Carla and Jake had shown me a kind of connection that was raw and unfiltered, built on mutual respect and open communication. But now, in the calm after the storm, I couldn't help but wonder, what comes next? The enormity of the previous night weighed heavily on me, not in a negative way, but in its sheer significance. It wasn't just about the physicality of what we shared. It was about the emotional barriers that had been broken, the walls that had come down. For the first time in my life, I felt completely seen, not as a friend, not as a guest, but as an integral part of something larger than myself. And yet, with that realization came a wave of uncertainty. I found myself questioning everything. What did this mean for our friendship? Would things ever go back to the way they were? Did I even want them to? These questions swirled in my mind, their answers elusive and layered with complexity. Carla joined me in the kitchen not long after, her face glowing with the kind of serenity that only comes from feeling deeply fulfilled. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat across from me, her eyes searching mine. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her voice gentle. I hesitated, then smiled. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Last night was incredible, but it's a lot to process." Carla nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It is, and it's okay to feel that way. We're figuring this out together, remember? There's no rush." Her reassurance brought a sense of calm, but it didn't completely quiet the doubts in my mind. Jake joined us shortly after, his presence as steadying as ever. The three of us sat in comfortable silence for a while, the unspoken bond between us stronger than words could convey. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself reflecting more deeply on the lessons I had learned from this experience. It wasn't just about stepping outside my comfort zone or exploring a new dynamic. It was about understanding the true meaning of connection. Carla and Jake had shown me that love and trust aren't confined to traditional definitions. They're fluid, ever-changing, and capable of taking on forms we might never expect. One of the most profound realizations I had was about vulnerability. For so long, I had built walls around myself, convinced that they were necessary to protect me from pain. But in tearing those walls down, I discovered something far greater: the freedom to be my authentic self. It was terrifying at first, but ultimately liberating. I also learned the importance of communication. Throughout this journey, Carla and Jake had been unwavering in their openness, always checking in, always ensuring that I felt safe and valued. Their example taught me that honest, transparent communication is the foundation of any meaningful relationship, whether it's romantic, platonic, or something entirely unique. While the experience brought clarity in many ways, it also left me with new questions. How would this dynamic evolve? Would it remain a cherished memory, or would it become a lasting part of our lives? These uncertainties didn't frighten me as much as they once might have. Instead, they felt like an opportunity, a chance to continue growing, learning, and exploring. For now, I'm choosing to focus on the present. The bond one share with Carla and Jake is unlike anything I've known, and I'm grateful for every moment of it. This journey has been one of transformation, not just in how I view relationships, but in how I view myself. I've discovered a strength and resilience I didn't know I had, and for that, I will always be thankful. If there's one thing this journey has taught me, it's that vulnerability is the key to connection. Life's most meaningful experiences often come when we step beyond the boundaries we set for ourselves. Carla and Jake showed me the beauty of trust, the power of communication, and the freedom that comes from embracing who we truly are. To anyone reading this, I hope my story encourages you to explore the unknown and to open your heart to the possibilities that life has to offer. The path may be uncertain, but sometimes that's where the greatest transformations happen. Thank you for being a part of my journey. Until next time.